Hey, have you heard about Z?
ZZ.
𝐊𝐿𝐴
Easy.
Mobile banking. Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances. Amazing.
Introducing the digital youth account. NDBZ. NDBZ from NDB Bank. The future is banking on us.
Creamy richness redefined. Smooth, soft, spreadable. Introducing Ultra Soft Fondue with canola and sunflower oil.
We search the world for the finest things for you. Things like sun-kissed European berries, rich chocolate from the world's best cocoa fields, and crisp cashews and fluffy marshmallows in a quirky Australian recipe.
𝐿𝐴 experience the world.
හැමදේම අතළඟ තියෙද්දි දුක් විඳින්නේ ඇයි?
Two and a half months ago, we started going out, watching, and supporting this beautiful game of rugby. 2.5 months ago, we put on our college t-shirts. Week in and week out, we went and supported our boys, who gave everything week in and week out for 70 minutes. These 2.5 months have shown that Dialogue Schools Rugby League is so much more than just schools rugby. A season filled with ups and downs. It truly is a season filled to the brim with moments and experiences that will be spoken for months and months to come. In the beginning, there were 12 teams. One by one fell, one by one rose. And at the end of last week, we had 4 teams. We had the defending champions from 𝐷𝐵𝐿𝐴, St. Peter's College. We had the ever so hungry the Green Machine, Isipathana College, and we have the most successful school in schools rugby in Sri Lanka, Royal College. We had one of the teams who made rugby in Sri Lanka what it is today, Trinity College Kandy. Last week they went onto the field, one goal in mind, to win. It was a win-win-win situation for all 4 teams. But 2 teams came on top. 2 teams will be battling it out for their 3rd place finish this weekend. I'm sure everyone has one question in the back of their minds, and I'm sure we have the right person to ask that question. For the past 2.5 months, we've been coming in every week. Of course, this is the Rugby Show brought to you by Quadrangle magazine. And for the past 2.5 months, we've had the perfect person. We've had the man with all the knowledge, the statspert, all the way from New Zealand, Boa Athu with us. And we are glad to have him back once again. Boa, hello, how are you?
Well, what an extraordinary welcome and introduction to the show. Thank you very much for such a stunning introduction, and very good evening, very good afternoon, very good morning, wherever you may be, all our fans around the world. Yes, time has certainly flown by, and one thing's for sure, in the little island nation, the schools rugby, first 15 championship or premiership, certainly puts everything else rugby to absolute shame. The following, the fanfare, the exhilarating rugby, the skills, and of course the tribal, almost tribal derby-like rivalries. And not to mention all the online banter in and amongst the fans. Outstanding stuff. It's been one heck of a ride. And we're almost there, aren't we? We're almost there to decide who will crown themselves as the undisputed and undefeated, probably undefeated champion of 2024. So we can't wait. And I have to say, your introduction was one heck of an allegory. That was almost poetic, almost Shakespearean-like. And now it's great to be back. And what a show we have. So let's get right into it.
Yes. Now, before I ask you what happened last week, we'll focus a bit more on the league as a whole. What are a few moments that stood out to you personally? We've had around almost 40 matches that got played during the past 2.5 months. What are a few matches, a few moments that stood out to you personally during this league?
Yeah, I think once we got to the business end, once the big boys started fighting, or fighting is probably the wrong word, playing each other, I think St. Peter's, that back three, particularly 𝐕𝗫𝐿𝐴 and their fullback, Pashindu Bandara, when they're in full flight, that one-on-one ability, that skill set to beat players, sidestep, run around, it's highlight reel stuff. It's like good race horses trying to finish a Group 1 race and leaving others for dead. For me, that's been a real highlight. And of course, one game, particularly the Green Machine, Isipathana versus DS. DS almost pulled it off. They almost pulled it off, but the Green Machine fought back like the true Green Machine there. And they pulled a certain yes, it was a certain defeat, and brought about a victory, which I think really buoyed them. And of course, last weekend we saw, talking of Green Machine, Shaahid Zumri. This boy's got ice cold veins. He just, and the whole pin drop silence at Havelock Park. I don't think I've ever witnessed or heard anything. Anything remotely close to that. And then we slotted the kick. The pictures and the sound would have told you the story. That was fantastic. And there was so many other highlights as well. But for me, particularly those really stuck out. Oh, and before I forget, Shahan Altaf from Trinity, that peach of a drop goal. What a breath of fresh air. Absolutely. I'm a real big sucker for drop goals and field goals. So for me, those are a few highlights, many, many more. And I apologize in advance for anyone who thinks, why'd you forget this? Why'd you forget? There's just so many. But for me, those were a few which really stuck out.
Yeah. Let's move on to the matches that were held last week. We'll talk about St. Peter's in a moment, but I think we need to give Trinity credit where credit is due. They pushed Peters to the absolute limit. I think for the first time this entire season, Peters seemed to be a little tiny bit worried in that 70 minutes that they played. Trinity College's defense was on point. Their offense was on point for the majority. I'm not going to say the entire 70 minutes, but for the majority of playtime, they happened to be on point. Bo, what do you think Trinity College did right in that 70 minutes? And what do you think Isipathana College is going to look for in that 70 minutes? And what can they adapt going into this weekend's fixture?
Well, last week I said you've got to do 3 key things. Number 1, you got to contest everything. So clearly they've listened to it and they contested everything. Rucks, mauls, the defensive patterns one-on-one, which I'll get to in a moment. And of course the lineouts. I just cut a clip this morning and I posted on the Facebook group. There's a beautiful shot of the number 2 jumper jumping across, disrupting the set piece. And if you look at their defensive line speed, they put a lot of line speed, and they didn't allow these skilled, speedy St. Peter's backs any room. So soon as you put pressure and you get in their face and cut down that space, they find that life's difficult. So I thought they did that really well. And of course, those contestable kicks, particularly those little box kicks, going into just outside the 22 and giving their wingers. And I have to say, they've got a very good kicker. I think the young man's name's 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴. He had some real good depth and height on that kick and good trajectory. It gave his chase line a chance to have a real good crack. So I think they did those really well. And of course, they were very fearless. They played like they had no pressure. They just went for everything. And every time they started to shift the ball laterally into space, going side to side, they looked really good. So it's not complex at this level. I keep saying this. You do simple things, you do it really well, you do it right, you get the points. And of course, I have to say, I thought, there was a little element of luck. I think the rub of the green was with St. Peter's, but of course, this is a very highly skilled team. They're very good enough to finish things. But now, well done, Trinity, and well played to St. Peter's as well. Unbeaten, they march on, they roll on. But the common thread the common theme I see this whole week going right throughout online, particularly my Facebook group, was Trinity fans feel they are victims of a conspiracy theory. I don't know what that is, but yeah, there you go.
Okay, now we spoke about Trinity. I think we need to talk about St. Peter's College Colombo. They showed that they are off that thread, off that championship thread. They scored when it mattered. They were on point when it mattered. The majority of the match they were behind, but somehow they had a 9-point difference at the end of those 70 minutes. But what do you think St. Peter's College did right? What do you think that halftime pep talk from Sanath Martis was like? Because they were down and they were up, they were down, they were up. It was a seesaw of a match. What do you think was happening in that halftime that made sure that Peters came on top?
Usually with a side like that where you have the skill set, you've got to back yourself and you have to stay patient. I've always said this, it's good to get tested. And I think that's what St. Peter's had to endure. And like a good champ they picked themselves up off the canvas, they dusted themselves off, and then they came back to eventually win the game. So it's all about, taking your opportunities and finishing it, which is pretty much what they did. That last score out on the left wing, obviously turnover ball, they stayed in the fight. In fact, it was Trinity who made that line break, and I thought, had they just maybe gone for a chip and chase or a grubber, gotten into the St. Peter's 22, something, they could have created something. But instead, they chose to keep ball in hand. St. Peter's backed their defense. And, they're a confident side. They backed their skills. So I think what Coach Martis would have said was, look, just be patient. Forget about that first half. Let's focus what's in front. Let's build pressure. Let's take points. Let's respect what's in front. And I think St. Peter's, they probably just got caught on the hop a little bit as well. And given that Trinity were missing, obviously, the skipper and vice captain, two key influential players, they probably played with no baggage. They just said, look, let's just have a go. Let's be fearless. We have got a very simple game plan. And in that first half, obviously, it worked. And don't forget, they took the points every time they had pressure. The shot was called. They built scoreboard pressure. And in fact, it was in the 61st minute when who I believe is the smartest player or the smartest captain with all the right calls he's made so far, Dulaj Navoja comes up. When St. Peter's, they were either here nor there. They were just getting stifled in the defensive line. He stops everything. He just slows everything down, points to the posts, builds a bit more scoreboard pressure, just calms everything down, and they fought themselves. And this is what champions do. This is what champions do. And this is what good captains do. So I think that's probably going to be their theme. They've got the skill set. They've got to back themselves. And it's very enjoyable to watch this St. Peter's side. I love watching this team. And it was a good contest. So it was a great game. And I think St. Peter's would have learnt a few things about themselves as well. That ability to fight back. And I think it was a perfect preparation for what lies ahead this weekend against the Green Machine.
Well, something we saw throughout this season was cards thrown up left, right, and center. I think last weekend during the St. Peter's Trinity match, there was not one point in the match where all 15 players of one side were on the field. Why do you think that is? Is that a technical thing? Is that something on the ref's side? Is that a player's problem? What do you think that the reason behind that is?
There's several aspects. So everything you said, there's a bit of everything. First and foremost, I've been going on and on about this, and I sound like a broken record. It's on-field discipline, right? I've been saying that teams need to watch their on-field discipline, particularly around the breakdown, tackle players not being released. Okay, then you're offside, and then doing all these little silly things, right? Now, on the flip side of that, we have a bunch of referees who, I don't really want to get into this, but they're not the most reliable in the eyes of the players, coaches, and the rugby public. And they're very trigger happy when it comes to handing out penalties and cards. So it's got to this point where even if you sneeze the wrong way or if you say the wrong thing, you're probably going to get carded, as we saw last weekend. Okay? So be that as it may, I think it's really up to players and coaches, particularly the coaches. They need to tell their players, they need to adapt to who is refereeing and what's being actually said out there. So there's got to be a little bit more communication as well. So if the players, on-field players, can actually improve their discipline, and at the same time, the referees need to understand and be practical. You can't be blowing each and every technical aspect of the game. If that's the case, then we'll probably have a 4.5-hour game of rugby, because each and every incident is probably going to be either a penalty or a card. And also, I have to say, this weekend particularly, there was a few cards which are absolute rubbish, absolute nonsensical and utterly ridiculous. They were never cards, they weren't even penalties. Okay, maybe at worst, it could have been a penalty. And there was a couple of incidents, they were given as yellows. It should have been red cards under the World Rugby High Tackle Framework. And of course, there was one incident which was an alleged strike. Striking is foul play. Right. So I think there needs to be a little bit more awareness, a bit more education. But then we're dealing with people who, probably think they know everything out there as far as rugby goes. So it's a complex problem, okay, because we're dealing with stakeholders and personalities. It was up to me. It's a very, very straightforward fix. As a World Rugby coach educator, I know exactly what needs to be done. But the problem is not up to me. There are other people who need to oversee this. And then, of course, with the politics and the egos and the existing relationships, this just mires the whole thing. So, I know it's a pretty long-winded answer, but I think somewhere in there, if you decipher all that line by line, you will have the answer.
Yes, let's take a quick look into the highlights from when St. Peter's College Colombo took on Trinity College Kandy, a match that promised everything and truly did deliver everything. St. Peter's College with 37 on the board, Trinity College 28. St. Peter's College retaining the General Deshapan Dennis Pereira Trophy for a record 7th time. These are the highlights.
College taking on Trinity College.
Now from the short side, the Petroids. Seems like there was a high shot, and straight away referee penalizing Trinity College. Yellow card straight away. Side. Here's a clear look. This is Anaika breaks, and here's 𝐊𝐿𝐴. Seatbelt tackle, arms contact on. Petroids taking it quickly. Here's Shihara to the corner, and 𝐿𝐴, the league's highest try scorer.
Because there was some late tackle on the try scorer. That was the try scored by
There's a foul play. You have to start kick off in the penalty.
The publicity of it, and we want nothing less than another league title, and this time just short. Here's Shihara. Good chasing tackle from Trinity College. Shihara gets back up and is straight away penalised. A little bit of a brain fade from here's 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐴 lining it up, has the legs behind it. Here's 𝐵𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐴, the danger man. Gives it out and loses the ball forward. Right hand bounces on the loose ball. It's offload now to Usman. Usman gives it out and here's the Amana back try coming from Rangamo. Hits it well and it's true. Gali now to Shihara. Finds space and Praneeth Silva in the corner. And yet again seems like that's another high shot. Having a numbers mismatch can really hurt you.
Usman Shafraz is the guilty party there, but I think what will be going in his favour is that the player was falling and deep in. You can see he clearly goes down as he loses his footing. The defender, the attacker rather.
Neck contact, a dangerous play. The number 12 is a yellow.
Will see find himself.
Yes, Navodya. Offload, Gulas Navodya runs through the middle. Navodya, can he go all the way? And Navodya, big hit on Navodya, and that's a penalty. Navodya collecting the ball from front, and so needs to put some power behind that. No problem with it. Yes, passes to Bandara with one man to beat. Bandara gets in. 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐴 this time around gets the box kick. Pressure on the Trinity half, first 5/8.
Again, can you check?
There you can see the replay there.
Good straightening run from the forwards. Numbers mismatch.
Number 17, number 12, line outside.
No problem as in front of the defending champions reaches out, and that is the reply. Tackler roll away was the call. Again Pereira carrying the ball.
That could turn a game on its head. Rahul Peter makes no mistake from in front.
Peter's just one shove away, and seems like here's Peter with his conversion, and
number 5, but now Dulaj now the skipper from St. Peter's College takes it and he's brought down.
And that's a yellow, second yellow. He's going to miss out the next week most probably, Romario, and that's crucial.
Line out one.
Trinity is setting it up. Trinity need to make sure that they score from here to have any opportunity. Trinity touchdown and they get a score. There's a camera right in front of that incident. Here's what happened. Trinity setting that ball up. Ball carried by 𝐶𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐴 Dissanayake, and seems like he's gotten across.
This is not clear and obvious. You have to avoid the try.
That's the Amana Bank try for Trinity College.
With the nature of this game, we will have to wait for a couple of more minutes as 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐴 puts the ball to boot, and it's through. Pete Wrights turning the ball over. Here's 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐴. 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐴, the league's highest point scorer, goes in for an Amana Bank try, and that will.
But Rahul Peter, quite good you could say on that second viewing, and from then on 𝐿𝐴, there's no stopping that young.
Making it available. I would bet my bottom dollar that there was a ruck form there as
5 tries for St. Peter's. In reply, Trinity managed just 3 tries. They'll be kicking themselves.
Those were the highlights from St. Peter's College, win supreme over Trinity College Kandy and retained the General Deshapanya Dennis Pereira trophy last weekend. And an absolute cracker of another match that we had last weekend. Royal College taking on another undefeated team.
Before we just jump onto that, there's just a couple of things I want to highlight because we spoke about this whole discipline thing. Look, there's a couple of, there's more than a couple, there's a few what you call seatbelt tackles, right? So one thing I have to say is not every seatbelt tackle is worthy of a yellow card. I think we just need to settle at penalties because the force is sometimes, ridiculously low. There's a secondary contact. So that's one thing. Because as soon as you give a yellow card, it just kills competition. So I think given the referees need to be using a little bit more common sense. Okay. And then number 2, if you looked at the last try 𝐊𝐴𝐶𝐴𝐿 scored, most of the Trinitians were sort of trying to, it's what I call chest surfing. They were going in way too high and they were just getting fended off. So I think as a rule of thumb, in general, if all teams were to lower that tackle height, so below the sternum, where your nipples and your armpits are, go nice and low. I think you'll stop giving away all these unnecessary penalties and potentially accidental head contacts, because once you start swinging arms coming in, you saw there was another, well contained tackle of 𝐵𝑚𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐵, but just unfortunately the follow through, as he was dipping down, you saw a swinging arm come through. Now there is mitigation there, but under the high tackle framework, again, once you leave it in the hands of these referees and TMOs, and clearly we have an issue there because we have, people who don't necessarily know what they're doing or talking about, then it becomes a lottery. So we've got to try, as coaches and players, the only advice I can offer is try and really minimize that risk and don't put yourself in a compromising situation where you then get referred to someone who supposedly make the right call, but it's a bit of a lottery. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense. And to all our viewers, if you have any questions, it can be technical, it can be more morally, whatever it is, I don't think there's another more suitable man on the face of the earth to answer your questions right now. So please drop it in on our Facebook Live, YouTube Live. We will forward it on to our statspert, Boa. Now, moving on. Royal College versus Isipathana College. At the end of 70 minutes, the scoreboard was 18-19. But I think a lot of people were not focusing what was on the scoreboard, what else was happening on the ground. But for a moment, we'll focus about the 70 minutes. Boa, your thoughts on this match? I know you have a lot of thoughts about what happened. The stage is yours.
Pulsating game. Everything what a typical Royal Isipathana should embody was there. Apart from probably the last 40 to 60 seconds. We'll get to that. Okay. But first of all, I want to congratulate Isipathana for a well-earned win. Now, I know some people will say, what is this guy going on about? But no, let the record show that they've won and they have now earned the right to walk into a grand finale. It's not called a grand final. It's the big dance and play St. Peter's. I was very well contested games, very physical. There were a few errors and there were some on-field discipline issues as well, which I think, more or less cost the momentum of the game. And Royal can feel extremely hard done by. I thought they did everything right till that end. And of course, then that controversy game, which we'll get to in a minute. And at the same time, I think Isipathana, there were a number of instances where they were starting to drift away, but then they fought themselves back. They took the points, that old chestnut, take the points, build scoreboard pressure. And of course, that try from Shaahid Zumri, where the fullback came on a hard, short line, drew and passed, and I thought that pass was fantastic because that's what made the try. And Zumri had the skill set to get on the outside of his opposite number. And soon as he got on the outside, you afford him that kind of space, it's game over. The goose is cooked, And of course, the atmosphere was amazing. I mean, I felt it watching on my screen. I actually had two screens going on because we had two games going on. So look, it was an amazing game. So let's not take away from that, and let's give credit to the 15 young men of either side, and of course the finishers on the bench, and of course the coaching staff and everyone involved. It was an amazing game. It was a great memory, and that photo of Zumri right at the end after he slots it in, I think that's going to be an iconic photo for Isipathana rugby. That it was a humble enough smile, but there was a little bit of a confident smirk as well. It reminded me of one of those memes on the internet, and that's why I call him the Riddler. He's got that Riddler smile as soon as he slots it over. So that was, it was a great game. It's a bit unfortunate what happened right at the end. Look, and I'm not trying to offer anyone life advice because there's all this other stuff going on the internet, and I don't spend too much time outside what I do on my own Facebook group. I don't spend hours on the internet looking at what's going on, but I did see some really unsavory stuff, particularly targeting players of either side. I've said this right along. These are schoolboy rugby players, late teenagers who are looking to transition and become young men. So I think we have to all keep this in perspective. And most of the criticism and most of this, I wouldn't say it's hate. I don't know whether there's hate out there because, like I said, I'm not qualified enough and I don't spend enough time on the internet to be looking at all this rubbish. We have to really keep this in perspective. This is a schoolboy sport, and if people are starting to behave in, less than ideal situations, it's not good. But again, like I said, I'm not here to give life advice. Let's just focus on the rugby. Now, obviously, you're going to ask me about that penalty, right? So I'll give you, I'll give you my view on it, because obviously, depending on which side you support or which side of the coin you subscribe to. So, for example, for the Isipathana fans, in their eyes, that's an absolute penalty. There was a shove after the whistle. That was supposedly foul play, and against the spirit of the game. And then, of course, if you support the royal side, and if that's the side of the coin you subscribe to, you would say, no, what rubbish is that? What nonsense? That's not a penalty. Then what about all these other incidents? And, it was just nothing more than a gentle push, and then there was a bit of an exaggeration. And again, I don't want to criticize either players, because like I said, these are schoolboys, they're learning, okay? And it's just, heat of the moment stuff, emotional, and you just got to let sort of go. So, in my view, this is my personal view, that should have never been a penalty, because that's what I call handbags. If we are going to start nitpick and penalize incidents like that, then we'll probably have a very long game of rugby, and we'll have to penalize pretty much everything. And there were a number of incidents which I thought warranted a little bit more than a talking to. And there was sort of pushing and shoving. And, it's all part of gamesmanship. I mean, this is a contact sport played by, these young boys. So, to be clear, it should have never been a penalty. And in fact, just to be sure, I referred this matter, I showed the footage to one of my colleagues here who is part of the Super Rugby TMOs, and I said, hey, if you were TMO, what would you do? And he says, nah, just play on. We'll just go on to the next infringement, which was the scrum. And the term he used was handbags. These things happen. However, let me also say this. I think one of the reasons why Isipathana are so adamant, or most supporters of Isipathana are so adamant that it should be a penalty, is because they've been at the receiving end, or they've copped some really horrendous on-field decisions, particularly last season. And I think they just feel that the rubber, the green, excuse the pun, the rubber, the green, and the tide is starting to change. So given that they have been feeling victimized to that nth degree, when something like this happens, I can completely understand why they feel vindicated. And there's nothing wrong about that, and I fully empathize with, the Isipathana fans. Now, on the other hand, I also understand why the Royal fans are feeling that way, because they feel hard done by. They did everything they could to win that game, and they feel that they were robbed. Now, whether they were robbed or not, I don't know, because you have to go back to that situation, play the scrum, and see what happens next. So who's anyone to say that there was another infringement and then Zumri gets another shot? Okay, so that's the reality of it. That's how I break this whole situation down. But end of the day, a penalty was awarded by the referee who referred it on to the TMO. But soon as it went to the TMO, I knew the writing was on the wall and something suspiciously spectacular was going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. And a penalty was given. It was all dramatic, theatric. But again, Zumri, he was good enough and he had the skill set. He was cool and calm under pressure to kick that penalty. So good on him. Well done. And I know there's a lot of people crying about this result. Look, the reality is Royal. You got to suck it up, move on. Life's unfair. These things happen. Okay, it's done now. You just got to move on. However, now given that Royal, who are one of the heavyweights and the more influential schools in the rugby circuit, given that they feel they've been victimized by the officiating, maybe finally, we'll start to see some action. Because let's rewind back a few weeks. Remember when Science College were allegedly, they felt, nothing really happened. So now that one of the big boys have been affected, maybe we'll start seeing some action. So that's my take on it. To be clear, I don't think there was a penalty. But, as far as discipline on field, you never, ever, ever want to put yourself in a situation like that where the officials, in the heat of the moment, the absolute cauldron, want to refer these matters. It's that simple. So I think it's a bit of both. Depends on how you look at it, which side you subscribe to, which side you support. I'm just trying to give you what I feel, what I think I would have done, and what I've referred to with some of my professional colleagues here. So hopefully that comprehensively covers that. But now, congratulations to the Green Machine. You're off to the big dance, and you've you earned the right. You earned the right for whatever reasons or however you see it. But now it's a great game, so let's not forget about that.
Yes, but I'd like to talk about one special player, Shaahid Zumri. It's fair to say that he has been carrying the majority of the weight this past season of the Green Machine. It came out to play during last weekend's match, and I think it's going to play a big part this weekend as well. How do you think Shaahid Zumri will be instrumental to make sure that the result of last year's league decider is not repeated once again?
He's a class player, and what separates a class player from the really good or great players is that the decision making. When they make the right decisions, everything just falls, into place. And of course, they see what's ahead. And every time they do something, it looks like they've got a lot of time. So that's experience, the class, the skill set they have, and of course the confidence. And keep in mind, if you rewind back to last week against St. Thomas's, that first 10 minutes, Zumri was given a really hard time by the Thomian defense. In fact, there was one instance where he got hit so hard, he got driven back. But then he came back into the game, he fought back. And that's the character of this young man. He knows he's good. It looks like he's very humble about it. He just gets around all that sort of stuff. He's got good character. And he does what he does best on a field of rugby. Yes, there is a lot of weight on his shoulders, but great players, they rise to the occasion. I've had the fortune of coaching a few players like that in the competition I've been involved here. And all you have to do is, particularly at halftime, if things aren't going right, just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, look, I need you to lift. I need you to lift so everyone around you can lift. And I think that's the Zumri effect he has. Once he starts to really get stuck into his work, everyone else sort of goes with him. And every time he does something, you can see the body language. And of course, once those, Patana, they have phenomenal supporters. So I think that's going to be the key. And keep in mind, all he needs to do is put another 70-minute virtuoso performance, and then the cup is theirs. There you go.
You said it best, the Zumri effect. So let's take a quick look at when the Zumri effect was in full play against Royal College last weekend. Isipathana College beating Royal College 19-18 and winning the Major Milroy Fernando Trophy. These are the highlights.
College, the unbeaten in Group 1A versus the runners-up from Group 2A Royal College. Changing direction, Zumri finding the space and he puts the kick into touch. Here's that pass by 𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐿. Zumri taking his time.
So therefore you may go for a penalty with a yellow card.
The confirmation comes from the TMO. There is a penal, puts a huge thumping kick. That was really a tester and certainly, I'll call it here Zumri with the first real opportunity, and this time that's a peach of a kick. Oh, lovely step by 𝐿𝐴𝐴. 𝐿𝐴𝐴 running through, and is that a high tackle? Yes, right in front of referee Weiranga.
Yes, very well collected as well. And the question is,
I see it as a shoulder charge. So number 3.
Oh, Kavin Tarusha. Number 14, Didula. And he runs all the way to no man's land, and he was isolated and could have well been turnover. Unfortunately, Didula taking those points. No mistake. I'm not sure with the technique in terms of taking that. Good defense by Tineta Dodanggoda.
Number 14, offside, green.
Idris
Number
Farouk. Nabil Yahya with the first real kick to points in this game, and he makes no mistake. Pin drop silence, and here comes the cheer for the Green Machines. You cannot keep this man away. Here his brother Shaahid Zumri, turnover, and that's the first Amana Bank try. 𝐿𝐴𝐴, the fullback, he puts the kick, lovely fend by Royal. Here comes the pressure. Abdullah 𝐿𝐴𝐴 clearly under pressure, he needs support, and he was holding on to position, and Royal wins the penalty. Mohammad Farouk, and Royal into the lead for the first time of this game, and Dodanggoda once again secured very well. Nisala, the skipper. Here comes Isipathana's line. Abdullah 𝐿𝐴𝐴 to Zumri. He's playing wide. Zumri with a good step, and Zumri is through for the Amana Bank try. And Zumri, the playmaker. It's all Zumri. 14 points to Zumri to add the 2 points. Ben Pereira, the skipper, cuts inside. He needs support. Royal still playing with the advantage, but
repeated offside and block tackle.
Oh dear, another yellow card. Another yellow card. Royal still with position.
Again advantage.
Yet another advantage. I think it was number 9, Kalindu. And here's the Amana Bank try. Not successful. Here's Idris with the conversion, and that is successful. Royal once again take the lead. Gives it to Tarusha, and that's a knock-on advantage. Not what you wanted. That's not what you wanted. Is that the full time? Going for the TMO. Here is that replay. Kalindu with a pass to Avishka Hiran, playing as the first receiver. That's a knock-on. And for my naked eyes, Abdullah, I don't see a foul play. That was purely a rugby incident, quite accidental. But would be interesting what referee or the TMO Dinkapiri's call is going to be.
Can I have another angle? Nishanka.
Oh.
Whistle එක blow කරලා ඉවරයි. Number 20 Royal coming behind and pushing. Won.
Can he be the hero? Taking his time. And the kick is good! Shaahid Zumri, the man who took this Isipathana College for that unbeaten tag. 19 points to 18. This is some exciting stuff. 2 tries to 1, 2 penalties to 4 penalties, 1 conversion each. Shaahid Zumri, player of the match, scored 17 points out of 19 points.
Those were the highlights when Isipathana College beat Royal College Colombo last weekend and regained the Major Milroy Fernando Trophy. Before I hand it over to my co-host and my good buddy Tehran Bazir, we have a question on our Facebook Live. This question is from Adrian Mahasenandan and it is about the yellow card on the Peter Wright player. I think the specific yellow card he is referring to is when Shan Altaf did a quick chirp and he was charging for the ball. He was in the air, the Peter Wright player backed up towards him and he fell on his head or on his shoulder. And that was a yellow card for that. So what do you think happened here and what do you think the right call would have been, or if that was the right call ever?
No, it wasn't the right call. It was a ridiculous call. You know me, I'm pretty black and white. I'm very abrasive. I'm not going to hold back on this. Look, that was purely accidental. The St. Peter's player had his feet firmly planted on the ground. He's a big lad. He had his eyes on the ball and he was trying to catch it. And then we had a Trinity player who was hell-bent on trying to jump into that space. And again, to his credit, he was, it was a contest. He was just trying to get the ball and his eyes were firmly fixed. He didn't actually see the St. Peter's player. So it was just accidental. It wasn't either reckless. What you have to look at is if there's foul play, there's 2 things. Is it reckless, okay, or is it intentional? So anyone who knows nothing about rugby, just looking at that incident, can understand that it was an accident. It's what we call a rugby incident. So it should have never been a yellow card. Worst case, absolute wafer thin margin, a penalty. But, I mean, what's that St. Peter's boy going to do? He was just looking up and holding his ground, which he's entitled to do. So terrible call. It's never a yellow card. No. I hope the TMO gives himself an uppercut. And now let me answer the second part of the question, which he probably hasn't asked. And thank you, Adrian, for asking this. The second yellow card he got was for an alleged elbow strike. Okay, so that's this part, elbow to the neck. Now, if you look at the foul play, that's regulation 17, any strike, so that's a closed fist, that's a punch or a strike with the elbow to the head or neck area, is a straight red card. But what did the AR say? His recommendation was a yellow card. So I think he got that wrong there. And if the TMO had been referred, and if you look up the rule book, it would have been a red card. So 2 wrong calls, wrong color cards, or well, first one should have never been a card. It's that simple. So it complicates the whole matter, because I understand there's obviously going to be a judicial hearing and there'll be some implication on whether this child can or can't play the final. So I'm not in any position to say yes, no, what should happen. But what I'm saying is based on the knowledge I have in and around foul play and regulation 17, this is how it usually happens. So hopefully a little bit of common sense will prevail. And both players, because I understand Isipathana player. Oh, sorry. Let me talk about this as well. The yellow card, which was direct shoulder contact to the head with the Isipathana player. Now that was given as a yellow card. Under the high tackle framework, that's a straight red card. There's no, it got referred to the TMO. So this is the whole problem. Now this just complicates the whole scenario because there's judicial hearings, potential suspensions and missings. So you can see how when you have people who don't know exactly what they're talking about or doing, it makes a complete mess of things. So I just want to highlight these things so that everyone out there can actually understand and learn. If you really want to know this, just go on the World Rugby Passport website. Okay, there are all these scenarios, and look up Regulation 17. Regulation 17. It's all set out there. You see the sanctions, what you can't do, and how they apply this framework. So please learn it, educate yourself, and that way, when something like this happens, you will be able to make a correct decision yourself. Okay?
Yes, and I hope, Adrian, your question is answered. And I think, if my memory is serving me right, the 2 yellow cards would lead to a red card. I think we have another question. Can that red card player play the next match? How does that work? What do you think is going to happen here, Boa?
I just answered that. So if they deem that the second yellow card was accumulation, or 1 + 1 = 2, which is the red, and if they deem that the first yellow card wasn't in fact a yellow card, then on that technicality he'll be free to play. However, as I said, what complicates the matter is, if they look at that second yellow card, and if they look at the video evidence, and if they find a clear elbow strike to the head, then that has to be upgraded from yellow to red. But if they don't, then the St. Peter's player, in my view, will probably be free to play. But again, I'm not the person making these decisions. I know I get a lot of questions asked, and people think I have this superpower and I have this control and influence. I don't. I'm just an analyst, doing this because it's my hobby. I love following the local schools league, and this helps me staying connected. So to answer your question, if that first yellow card is scrubbed out or wiped out, then the second yellow just stays a yellow. Therefore, it's not a red. So he should be free to play. But if the second yellow is looked at, and if it's upgraded red, then there'll be further sanctions, which means that he'll miss this week. So I really hope, I really don't want players, and I feel really bad for these players, because these kids have worked really hard to get to this. And I know all the opposition will be saying, no, it's a red card, blah blah blah. But just come on, there's got to be smarter ways on how we can utilize this. Now, I'm not going to get into that because that'll take a lot more time. But Adrian, hopefully that gives you all the answers you need. All right.
Yes, I hope that answered your question, Adrian and Mr. Tilina. Now, that's it from me for the moment. And to carry on with the show and to talk about the final week of this all-important Dialogue Schools Rugby League, Tehran, my co-host, my good buddy, over to you.
Thanks, Shaven. Thanks, buddy. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Rugby Show Live. I'm Tehran Bazir, and I'm going to be taking the next following segment here on our schedule, which is basically this next Saturday's epic game, which will be having the finals and the third place finals games. And welcome, guys. Welcome. We had to have your back wherever you are, all around the world or around Sri Lanka watching this. May stick around. Do not go away yet. This is just beginning. Boa, as always, a pleasure to see you again.
This is all mine. Good to have you back from the election campaign trail. Look at your bright red shirt.
Yeah.
How can anyone miss you?
Dude, I'm
It's always,
you never know.
Always good to talk to you, and always good to be on the show. And as always, very grateful. Thank you to the Quadrangle. Thank you to all our sponsors. And of course, the papre.com. How can we forget? Without them, we won't be able to bring you all these wild and wonderful footage. So there you go.
Exactly, bro. So a big shout out and thanks to Dialogue and the papre.com for allowing us to use their highlight videos most of the time to make this show a success. So a huge shout out and thanks. And let me just dive right in for an epic week this Saturday at Havelock Park. We had the finals for championship. Isipathana taking on St. Peter's. Wow. Impressive play from Path. I heard the first segment with you and Sherwin, on this call, I was thinking this is not going to be a one-sided game. This is going to be so nail-biting that Havelock Park will be twice as a full house as the last game with Royal Empire. I can just imagine the entire crowd just filling up. I'm sure people will be on the ground just sitting there since of no space. Boa, what do you think this Saturday is going to be?
I think it's going to be epic. I think the two best and most deserving teams have made it to the... It's a virtual final, isn't it? I know there's a few equations, but the way I see this is that Isipathana, they've been like this racehorse who had a slow start off the starting gates. But as the season has unraveled, depending on their opponent, they've just stepped up bit by bit. And they've, timed their run to almost perfection. And particularly given that the last 3 games, they were tested and they had to be in the fight almost for the full 70 minutes, that's going to make a huge difference. And as far as St. Peter's go, it was a timely test. It was a timely test at the hands of Trinity, who most people thought would just turn up and just go through the motions. But boy, they gave the defending champs an almost fright, almost derailed their campaign. So I think both teams' preparation have been ideal. You couldn't ask for a better prep. Of course, Havelock Park is the sacred home of Isipathana Rugby, and that's going to have a huge impact. Now, I know there's a lot of there's a lot of talk swirling around of wanting to change the venue, blah blah blah. Look, I just think that's an absolute load of nonsense. Isipathana have earned the right to host this game on the reciprocation of last year and this year. And of course, as the host, they have to be afforded every right to ensure that they can have all safety precautions in place. And if they do that, which I'm sure they're going to make every effort, then there's no issue, because what's to say that this is not going to happen at any location? It's very easy to assume and saying this is a Havelock Park, this is Isipathana, blah blah blah. But to me, that's just all absolute nonsense. I think it's going to be a great game. And as far as St. Peter's go, their form line, they're the one to beat. I mean, I wouldn't say they are the red hot favorite. They're a warm favorite. But I don't think either side will be comfortable with the fact that they have to carry the favorites tag. And I think Isipathana, they learned from last year. They didn't sort of try to overdo the whole, we're a green machine. And as I said, they've just built up. And this is the perfect stage. This is the absolute perfect stage. So it's going to be a great game. Tactics, which we'll get into in a second, will play a huge part. And usually finals, let me say this as a segue so that you can lead me on to the next part. Finals are won on defense. Let me say this again. Finals are won on defense. So, Isipathana are playing an opponent who love to score tries. They can score tries from anywhere. They have the skill set and they have the players, particularly in that back three. So this is going to be, that's going to be one heck of a game. You couldn't have written this script any better. The only thing I do have to say is I really wish this game was played as a standalone game just on that Saturday or the Sunday. So they could have shifted the Royal Trinity game earlier so that everyone could have really focused on one. Now, as an analyst, I have to get 2 split screens, one here and one up there, and it's just not going to be easy. So that's just my initial take on everything.
Yeah. Anyway, so of course we have to still talk about the Riddler of Isipathana College, Shaahid Zumri, after an epic performance last game against Royal. I want to talk about as well as 3 players, key players from St. Peter's, 𝐊𝐿𝐴 Silva, 𝗔𝐻𝐻 Shihara, and Pashthu Bandara. Boa, how would you say these players are going to turn out now? This is going to be the finals. Everyone's eyes are going to be on them mostly. I'm not saying it's going to be on them at all times, but mostly the eyes will be on them, especially Shaahid Zumri for all his line breaks and penalty kicks and goal kicks. 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐴, you measure all those line breaks, all that tries. Do you think that pressure should affect these boys, especially these boys in the field, or do you think this is going to? Supposed to be a calm game. Finals are normally shouldn't take it too much to your head. But what are your thoughts on this?
No, I think these kids are good enough to handle the pressure, and they've shown that a number of occasions in the cauldron, particularly Zumri, that kick, wow, iconic. And of course, the back three with St. Peter's. Before we get to that, one thing I do have to say is the key battle is going to be up front. I think both teams will be aware of the forward packs. And I just feel St. Peter's have a slight edge up front because they've got some very intelligent forwards. And of course, they were Dulaj Nawoj, who I think, in my view, is the most valuable player this year. Not so much for his scoring abilities, but his decision making and just how he gets the team going and, just doing all those right little things. So up front is going to, dictate. And of course, depending on who referees the game, that's going to play a huge part because we've seen at the breakdown, there's always been penalties called where you have hands on the deck or hands on the floor. And both these teams have a propensity of, going really, really low, and that could be a bit of an issue. So that's number one. But as far as matchups within the matchup, I think for me the key one-on-one matchup is going to be Shaahid Zumri and 𝐊𝐵𝐴𝐶𝐴 𝐊𝐵𝐴𝐶𝐴, because to me these two kids are the key game drivers. I think Zumri does pretty much everything for Isipathana, and he's the key organizer. And with 𝐊𝐴𝐶𝐴, he works very well with Rahul Peter at first five. And 𝐊𝐴𝐶𝐴 is the guy he's got that big slingy ability to pass nice flat hard torpedoes and get guys like 𝐕𝐵𝐴𝐶𝐴 on the outside and people like Pasinu Bandara into the game. So that's the real threat. So from a tactical point of view, I think Isipathana, particularly Isipathana, will really want to look at what Trinity did with their line speed. Particularly, if you recall, Buzz, last week I spoke about the 10, 12, 13 channel. So if you look at the St. Peter's 10 and 13 particularly, you have two, key drivers and two game breakers in Peter and 𝐊𝐴𝐴. So if you can curtail their space and don't give them any room to move, and if Isipathana can constantly jam and put pressure, I think that is the second key battle where this game is going to be won and lost, right? Now, if they don't do that, and if they afford players like Bandara and 𝐕𝐵𝐴𝐶𝐴 space, then it's going to be a very long night, and it's going to be a high-scoring game. What I think Isipathana need to do, and I'm looking at this from a defensive point of view, because if you want to earn something back, and which is what I think Isipathana have to do, because keep in mind, there's a small monkey on the back they're carrying as well. That the bogey team, the boogeyman has been St. Peter's for Isipathana. They've, last three finals, they've flunked it. So be that as it may, I think trying to stop St. Peter's tactically, frustrate them, get into their half of the field, earn themselves the penalties, and you can see, Zumri's kicking technique, his follow through on point, bang on, right? So as soon as they get the points, take the shot, build scoreboard pressure, and that's how you're going to win this final. And ideally, what Isipathana want to do is win this final, something like what they did against Royal, but don't allow St. Peter's to score more than a couple of tries. Keep it nice and close, build, score, because then through the bonus point scenarios and blah, 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 they'll walk home. For St. Peter's, what they need to do is they need to keep what they're doing, probably try and step it up a little bit more, look to cause chaos, and try and pretty much get as many points as they can in the first half. And they just need to score tries, really, because that's what they're good at. And I always believe that you play to your strength. And if they can put a little bit of scoreboard pressure, it means that Isipathana will have to chase the score and chase the game. And that's when the errors start coming in, and then that'll give them more opportunity. So it's a very tactical game, but I think both teams will be really up for it. It's going to be very tight and be jamming defenses. It's not going to be like a 45-32 sort of game. I feel it's going to be very, very similar to what we saw against Royal. And whoever kicks their goals and whoever nails their chances will go on to be the champ. So there you go.
Absolutely, Boa. I mean, right now, when you mention about whoever scores the kicks, the goals, you know what I feel like Zumri is at that amount of pressure right now, but I hope he takes it calmly. But speaking of those four key players, Boa, Shaahid Zumri, Pashudu Bandara, 𝐊𝐴𝐺𝐻 𝐕𝐵𝐶𝐻, and you mentioned earlier, Boa, that St. Peter's and Isipathana have been playing most of the time their simple game plan for almost every game. And do you think that same game plan that both teams play, that and the coaches, by the way, do you think they should up it up a bit, or do you see now, since you have seen the Royal Isipathana game and Peter's Trinity game, how do you see the game plan can be shifted on both teams? Do you think Isipathana can do a bit of a changes and Peters can do as well? How would you see it?
No, not really. It just comes down to the execution and making sure that you don't turn the ball over. You cut down on your error rate. That's what it is. What I'd like to see in a grand final is, next to no penalties, next to no turnovers, high quality, a lot of continuation, a lot of continuity, a lot of consistency. One thing I reckon both teams can really improve on is the set piece, the line out. Okay. There will be a lot of contesting of the line out, so that's going to be interesting how they work, and potentially maybe a few variations in the line out, because I feel both teams are, very easy to read the line outs, but again, if you do it well enough, that's not going to be an issue. The only thing I would look at is getting quick ball off the set piece, again, the line out, and looking to penetrate into that 10-12 channel, like run a real hard line. It's something I haven't seen enough of this year, teams doing. And whenever they've done it, I noticed Trinity did that once. I noticed Royal did that once. It just ended up in pressure and leading into a try. So I wouldn't do anything too different, because, again, what you have to understand, Buzz, is now with St. Peter's, you know what's coming, right? You know it's coming, but there's not a lot you can do. Once they get it on point, there's not a lot you can do. And it's the same thing with Isipathana. Once they get that momentum going, and once, so I wouldn't do too much different. And of course, there's not time. There's not enough time to change anything. So it's just who wants it the most. And I spoke about the monkey currently riding on Isipathana's back. It's the size of a gorilla. It's like a big silverback gorilla. So they would have talked about this, and they'd be very aware of it, and they will be doing everything they can to make sure they get rid of it. And once they do it, they'll feel like they've been, I love to say, born again, exercising their demons. So there's a whole raft of these things, and this is what I love about finals weeks. I've been fortunate enough. Premier grade. I've coached here, been involved in two amazing finals. The final week is just all about making sure you get your preparation, your detail right. So it's going to be one heck of a clash. Make sure you buckle yourself in. Either way, before I forget, the Royal Isipathana game, as we know, is decided by a penalty. Now, the last bit of controversy, okay? The precedent has been set. Now, I'd hate to think that this Saturday, the game will end up being decided on something similar. I have to say that. Because if something similar does happen, one side is going to feel almost ripped off and cheated. And then the other side will say, no, hang on a second. but this is what happened. So you see where this issue is, right? So let me just forewarn everybody. Keep the game high quality, keep it well disciplined, and both sides don't put yourself in a situation where you're flirting with danger. Let me say that as well.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good point. It's a really good point. It's a really good point. Indeed, I was going to ask that question about the handling of the game, especially. But before we get that question, hold on, board. So I was asked something else. Now, since Isipathana is going to host this at Havelock Park, I'm sure both sides are going to be packed. Patna crowd, Peters crowd. I remember you telling me this, but is there a possibility of pressure on both teams with a huge audience like this? I mean, it's a grand final.
No question. There's huge pressure, but pressure is always privilege. And these two teams, these young men, have earned that privilege. So I think both sets of coaches will be talking about that. They'll be having lots of team meetings, and I know both coaches, they have contrasting styles, but they're experienced enough to absorb this pressure. And like I said, the preparation for both teams has been fantastic, bang on. St. Peter's got really tested, but like the champ they showed character, and they came back into particularly that last 9 sort of minutes, 8 to 9 minutes. And again, same thing with the Isipathana. Yeah, I understand there's all this controversy and all this, but the reality is that they're given opportunity, they took the opportunity, and they made the right call, and they took the points, and they put themselves in that position. So that's just, to me, yeah, pressure is always going to be there. It's going to be a cauldron, right? So whoever can hold their nerve will execute their skill set better on the day and will eventually go on to win. However, let me also say this again. I know this sounds like a broken record, but we now know there's a precedent set, and this is the part I'm really, really nervous about. Really up the game when it comes to your on-field discipline. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to leave it in the hands of someone else, i.e. a TMO or whatever, right? And as far as the crowds go, yeah, it'll have a big effect, but I'm just hoping that everyone can enjoy the game, everyone can have a good time, accept the result, whatever it may be, and go home happy and just have a good celebration.
Indeed, Boa. Yeah, so best of luck to both teams, Isipathana College and St. Peter's. They're playing Havelock Park this Saturday, 17th August. But before I forget, Boa, I have another question to ask you. Let's not forget the referees and the TMOs on this final game. What would you think these key, I wouldn't say players, these key people, they're the ones who are handling this game as well. It's from the players doing their thing. These are the players, these are the people who are going to be handling this game, who are going to be taking decisions so seriously. It's going to have huge pressure on them. How do you think the referees and the TMOs are going to handle this finals of the Dialogue Schools Rugby League?
Well, based on the evidence we've seen, I hope they can reverse the trend. But all I have to say is, look, apply the rules and use a bit of common sense. Not every potential infringement is life-threatening or it deserves a yellow card, right? You don't have to. You're not obligated to do that. You use a bit of common sense, and this is a game of rugby. You're going to have rugby incidents, right? And I understand there'll be a lot of pressure from the crowd reaction, but do the right thing. Do the right thing and follow the rules and regulations and apply a bit of common sense. And I think if you do all these, you'll come to a situation where you're not over-engineering the problem or the solution. So you keep it really simple. So that's why, most of these incidents you see on a rugby field, it's what you call a rugby incident. Now, if I was a ref for a TMO, I probably would never give out cards or penalties. I'll probably make a terrible referee or TMO. But again, I look at it from a point of view. It's just got to be, common sense, a bit of practicality. Things will happen on a field of rugby, and this Saturday, I'll guarantee you, there'll be things happening. I just hope and pray that the final isn't decided on an incident.
Yep, you're right, bro. You're right. I mean, this is the finals. People would expect a nice flow game of rugby instead of the break of flow because of pulling the cards. I mean, no one would like that on a finals game, especially in international rugby as well. No one would like a referee pulling a card against an All Black South Africa game. It ruins the moment. So I hope the referees. I mean, I hope you agree with me, bro. It's just that no one likes it, especially when it comes to finals.
Trust me.
Yeah,
I do.
I mean,
that's why one of the reasons I came up with this the orange card, and my safe tackle framework. So that has been in part adapted here in New Zealand, the community game. That's a club and school, and of course, I presented this to World Rugby as well. But instead, they decided to go with trying to over-engineer the situation and come up with this fancy 20-minute red card, which they're trialing this year. So yeah, look, it's just got to be common sense, and for some reason, when it comes to the referees, common sense is largely uncommon, as we have seen. And again, guys, look, I'm not trying to have a go at anyone. All I'm saying is, I can only say what I see. So the referees, I know you're watching this. A bit of common sense, and take things for what it is. And hopefully we can all enjoy a great grand finale comes Saturday. And the most deserving team. It doesn't matter. Now, I know for the individual fans, like obviously Peters fans will want St. Peters to win, the Green Machine fan will want Isipathana to win, and that's completely understandable. But as far as I'm concerned, for me, it really doesn't matter who wins, so long as the most deserving team goes on to win.
Indeed, bro, indeed. It all matters on the team who plays the best of rugby. And let's not miss it. It's this Saturday at Havelock Park, the final game to who will become victorious for the championship. Isipathana College take on St. Peters. There's a huge reminder to everyone watching this show. And please do drop the questions in on our comment section. Please feel free. I'm sure I can get it down for Boa to answer them. And I hope Sherwin is with us on the call as well. Sherwin can jump in, ask the questions. Boa, we're so glad to answer them for you. Please do not feel scared. Let's go ahead. And right, moving on, Boa. We have Royal College and Trinity College at 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻 Stadium. What do you think is going to happen? Both teams, sadly for all, they could not believe what happened last week against Isipathana. Trinity, I hope they have gained some happiness about their performance. But I heard that Trinity have lost their captain for this game. How do you think this game is going to be, Boa?
Yeah, I feel very terrible for the skipper. Anu's a great player, and I think he's a lovely kid as well. He's great personality, good leadership skills. So look, this is a very, very interesting game. Obviously, it's like a pre-Bradby warm-up. Now, this game has been moved to 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻 Stadium. And I see on the chatter there's a question, something about 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻 as well, so I might as well use that as a segue. Hi, Boa, what's your take on... yeah, look, it's peculiar. It's a bit weird, if I am to use that term, because Jurassic Park, and a lot of people are asking me, what is Jurassic Park? Well, this is a term I coined back in 2018, and surprise, it's stuck, and now everyone's talking about Jurassic Park. It's the sacred home of Royal Rugby. So in essence, Royal are giving up a critical home advantage. But I've since learned the official line is that they want to make sure the surface is in pristine condition for obviously the Bradby first leg, which is understandable and fair enough. And maintenance needs to happen. And obviously both schools have agreed to move the venue to 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻. Me personally, I love 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻 because it's a great surface, and it's very nostalgic. I played all my Bradby Shield games in the late 90s at 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻. It's an amazing surface. Now, so much so, it's a fast, firm, and it's probably going to be a lightning quick surface as well. So in essence, I feel that this might actually hand Trinity a bit of an advantage. Yeah, so this is what I mean. It's just a little bit odd. I mean, if I was the coach, I'd be doing everything to play all my games at home. It's that simple, to use home advantage. But anyway, all that aside, like I said, both teams have agreed to this. This is a really, really important game. I think momentum is going to be really key. This is what I call the 1+2. It's not unprecedented because this sort of thing has happened in the past. It just gives everyone a little bit of opportunity to suss each other out, and particularly for the psychology of both teams, it's really important that you get the W, you get a win, and you roll on into Rugby Shield first leg, knowing that your form line is a winning form line. So based on what we've seen and where teams are feeling, I just feel that Trinity will feel a bit bullish. Royal obviously have to pick up the pieces after a heartbreaking loss, but they'll be up for it, and they'll really want to prove a point as well. And as far as, I mean, there's two schools of thoughts to this. All the diehards will be saying, why are we devaluing the rugby? And I understand that as well. But on the other hand, this is probably the closest everyone involved in this, that's particularly the players, these kids, and the coaches, this is the closest thing they will ever get to experience in their life as far as a proper 3-game series. So you treat it as such. But obviously, as far as the Shield goes, it's the one in the middle and the last which matters. So yeah, it's 210 minutes of really good rugby, and out of which I think if you can win 2/3 of that comprehensively, Royal or Trinity will go on to win the Shield. And I think it's just sort of gives us a bit of a glimpse and suss both teams out on how and where they're at, on how they approach it, what their tactics are going to be. I feel Royal might come in and kind of look to shelve themselves a little bit and just look to get the win. They won't want to show too much of a hand. Trinity, on the other hand, I feel they'll want to just build on this momentum and look to try everything they want to and then just go for broke. Because keep in mind, Trinity haven't seen the Shield in 10 years. 10 years. I remember 10 years ago, I actually had hair. Okay. That's a long time ago. So they'll be hell-bent on this. And I think they have every chance. I think they have every legitimate and realistic chance to upset Royal and have a real crack at the Shield. So Royal need to be very wary, and they need to be on their best behavior. And when I mean behavior, the game, the way they play, and of course, they need to watch their discipline, on-field discipline. It's a real key here. Cards, silly penalties, all that sort of stuff, Yeah. Try to be up for this. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting game.
Speaking of Boa, this game, I know it's going to be one of the eye-catching games before the Bradby leg. Just want to ask now, from last week's games from both teams, what do you think the mistakes can be made in order to play with these two other Titans? Royal obviously had some mistakes at Isipathana game, Trinity as well. What do you think they can build up on come in with this clash for the third place?
I think for Royal, they've got to go to it's what I call the cash and carry game, which is up front. Don't try to do anything fancy. Just keep it really simple. Strong, direct carries. Go through the middle. Look to penetrate and get the points. That's number one. And of course, the set piece. The line-out has been very, very shaky, I feel, for the very high standards they set for themselves. And they've got to go back to the tried and tested, beg your pardon, which is the fishtail driving maul. When was the last time you actually saw Royal score a decent fishtail driving maul try going 20, 22 meters? So I think it's got to go back to that. The goal kicking is really good. 𝐊𝐿𝐴 is on good striking form. So whenever they get the opportunity to build points, take the points. Nice and simple. What they don't want to do is try and play this ego game and try to match Trinity and look to play their pace. They'll play right into their hands. Trinity, on the other hand, do what they did against St. Peter's. I think they will be up for a more physical battle because Royal bring the real brute physicality that, Tyrannosaurus Rex type, abrasive sandpaper physicality. So they'll have to be really up for it. And Trinity, they just need to really speed up the game. Look for that chaos. Look for that left edge where I think Royal are very, very vulnerable. So they just look to keep flooding and attacking that left edge. And whenever they get a set piece on the right edge of the scrum, strike move, strike move, strike move. Because I think Shahan Altaf is a great game driver, great organizer. And Shahan, if you can, do us all a favor at Sukadadasa, see if you can nail a couple of drop goals. If you can do that, I'll shout you a drink. A soft drink, by the way. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. I hope Shahan Altaf is watching this show. I hope he heard that. So best of luck to both teams.
They all watch my show. I know. I'm just, look, guys. Let me sorry, Buzz. Let me jump in and take this opportunity. Thank you so much to all these people who message me. I am absolutely floored and blown away at the level of engagement we're getting on the show. The fans. So I'm forever grateful. And young Mr. Altaf, I know you're watching. If you can nail a drop goal, go for it. And I think it'll be a great opportunity to build more momentum and actually send a clear message to, by the way, my old school, Royal College. If you give me a chance, I'm going to hurt you in the pocket. So there you go.
Beautiful stuff. Just remind everyone, Royal and Trinity face off at Sugata Stadium this Saturday for the third place title. I really wish that it was on a separate day, not on the same day as the finals are headed, because I know it's going to be really, really difficult for Boa as well as other people who are trying to watch both matches at the same time. But it is what it is, and the matches have been played. There's no point changing. But best of luck to both teams. I just want to ask Boa something about the Pathan and Peters game. You've mentioned last time about the Peters, how they form their ruck, and it is park right there. How do you think it's going to now? I saw a bit of a few parked rucks at the Royal game, not as much as before. So do you think they should obviously scratch that away against Peters? What do you think? Sorry.
No, absolutely. Always take space. Take space. So what taking space means is when you get into a ruck, when you engage the opposition, you could just imagine, see where my white collar is. See, imagine that's where the ball is. Okay, so either side is the gain line. And let's say this is the attacking side, and they'd come in and just park up at the ruck. So taking space is you engage and then you drive a little bit further, maybe about a meter and a half. And what that does is you clean the opposition bodies onto the floor. So they have lesser standing feet who are able to take part in the game. And it takes time for them to get back up. It takes more energy. And by shifting the space and clearing the path or the ruck for your halfback, it means you're going to get much faster service off the ruck. And that will dictate the pace. So particularly with St. Peter's, they're very, very good at putting pressure and disrupting the ruck against teams who park up. We saw this very well against Royal. So they'll probably do the same against Isipathana. So clean bodies, take them to the floor and make sure that you've got good, fast service off the ruck. And when St. Peter's does that, it's the same thing, because I believe they have faster, speedier backs out wide. If they clean and if they take space, it just means that they'll have faster service, and it's what we call TQB, total quality ball. The next level up from TQB is called LQB, lightning quick balls. If they can get LQB all the time, watch out. It just means that people like 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐴, because there's this little thing, particularly 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 does, and I've noticed this beautiful skill. He gets into that gap and he sets 𝐊𝐴𝐴𝐴 on the outside and he swings a little pass, which is a flat, hard torpedo pass, and he just puts him just outside the man marking him. Once he does that, it's game over. We saw that even last weekend against Trinity, and obviously we saw that against Royal, and then the Goose got really cooked. So I think it's these little micro skills they really need to focus on, but it all starts at ruck time by making sure that you can, clean hard and take space.
Indeed, Boa. That was my last question. So if anyone has any more further questions, please drop in. I'm sure Sherwin or Boa can see them, and we'll be definitely able to answer you straight away before we end this show. Next up, Boa, is your favorite game, of course, the hot seat segment. Yeah, Sherwin, We'll be asking you the questions, and your predictions will come into play. So before I take off, just want to wish all four teams, Patana and Peters and Royal and Trinity, for their games this Saturday. Best of luck, and best of luck to all the referees and TMOs handling the games this weekend. And I just want to thank our sponsors, as well as Dialogue and Papare, for allowing us to make this show a success with their epic highlight videos. All right, so that's it from my end. Take care, Boa. Take care, all you viewers watching. I'll see you all next time. Sharon, back to you, buddy.
Thanks, Buzz.
Thank you, Teran. As always, asking all the hard-hitting questions, Teran Bazir, ladies and gentlemen. And now, probably the final Boa's Picks segment for this Dialogue Schools Rugby League. First and foremost, the Bradby preview. For the third place final, we have two schools who have a very, very rich heritage, a very rich history, a very rich, fierce history of battles going for more than 100 years. Boa, Royal College, your alma mater, taking on Trinity College, my alma mater. Who do you think is going to go away with the victory?
Well, segue to this. Last week, I think we got everything right, didn't we? Because we did. I did say, and I'm going to go with the same this time as well. I'm just going to go with the most likely scenario and the lesser likely, because I think both these teams just too close to call, and there's a whole lot of very variable factors. Now, I don't want to get into what these variable factors are, but everyone watching out there, you know what they are. Okay, so I don't need to say what it is, and that's something we can't control. I certainly can't control it. So as far as the precursor, the first of three, we're not going to call it a leg, the first of three. I think based on the form line, the most likely scenario is Royal to win by less than 5 points. That's the most likely scenario. The less likely scenario, and based on a solid form line which Trinity have been showing, particularly last week, they have every chance to get up and win this. And if they do, they will win by less than 8 points. I just feel that they've got the firepower out wide, they can get up there. So most likely Royal to win by 5 points or less. Lesser likely Trinity to win by 8 points or lesser. So there you go.
Okay. That is for the third place finish. And now I think for the question has been on everyone's mind for the past 1.5 hours. 2.5 months leading up to this very moment. 70 minutes that will undoubtedly end a very, very fierce rivalry going on for almost 2 years now. Will it be a repeat of what happened last year? St. Peter's College winning the Dialogue Schools Rugby League, or Sali Kumara and the Mean Green Machine end the undefeated streak of St. Peter's College and finally, once again, lift that all-important silverware? Boa, who have you got?
Well, pre-season, I think it was December 23rd, 2023. I made a post saying my pre-season favorite to win this competition is St. Peter's. And then the second and third close was going to be Royal and Isipathana. Well, guess what? We are now down to the final two, Isipathana in one side, hosting the game against the red-hot favorite. But in this case, I wouldn't say red-hot, warm favorite. So they will, the most likely result, and the most likely result is for St. Peter's to win by 7 points or lesser. So that's one option. Now, the lesser likely or the underdog option. Now I know the Isipathana, the faithful will be very comfortable with this. Is for them to pull off yet another last-minute win and to win by 3 points or lesser. That's the lesser probability. I just feel that they've learned a lot, particularly in the last 3 weeks. They've sort of really been in these dog fights. And it might come down to a last-minute penalty goal. It's that sort of thing. So just to recap, most likely scenario is red hot. I said it again. Red hot. The warm favorite St. Peter's win by 8 points lesser. That's one option. Option one. Option two, Isipathana fairy tale finish to finally get that monkey off the back. And when they do, man, can you imagine what their fans are going to be like online? To win by 3 points or lesser. Chances are we might have a repeat where Shaahid Zumri kicks another penalty goal and breaks a few hearts. And at the same time, and keep in mind, like I said, rubber the green, the tide has changed. Now, don't ask me how or why. I'm just telling you what I can see. So I think that's going to have a big effect on what happens on Saturday. But end of the day, I just hope and pray that it's incident-free and nothing silly influences how the referee blows the game. And most importantly, the most deserving team wins, and we all get to watch a fun, great finale.
Yes, definitely. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it from the man himself. The man we call the statspert, Boa Athu. Boa, thank you for hanging out with us for the past 2.5 months. We've learned a lot. The three co-hosts, myself, 𝐁𝐴𝐺 and Tehran, we've definitely learned a lot. And I'm sure all our viewers, all our fans have definitely learned a lot as well. This weekend is the moment we've all been waiting for. So make sure you go out and you support your teams, support them and uphold the spirit of this sport we hold so close to our hearts. No matter what, remember, these are schoolboys. They are growing individuals. They are still teenagers. There's so much more for them to do. So make sure that you protect the spirit of the sport no matter what you do. Have fun and have a good and safe weekend to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. And probably for the last time for this season, this is 𝐊𝐵𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐵 saying goodbye from the Rugby Show, brought to you by Quadrangle magazine. See you.
Hey, have you heard about Z?
𝐊𝐶𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐵.
Easy. Mobile banking. Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances. Amazing.
Introducing the digital youth account, NDBZ. NDBZ from NDB Bank. The future is banking on us.
Creamy richness redefined. Smooth, soft, spreadable. Introducing Ultra Soft 𝐊𝐿𝐴 with canola and sunflower oil.
We search the world for the finest things for you. Things like sun-kissed European berries, rich chocolate from the world's best cocoa fields, and crisp cashews and fluffy marshmallows in a quirky Australian recipe.
𝐊𝐿𝐴, experience the world.
හැමදේම අතළඟ තියෙද්දි දුක් විඳින්නේ ඇයි?
about Z?
𝐊𝐴
Easy.
Mobile banking.
Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances. Amazing.
Introducing the Digital Youth Account. NDBZ from